Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. So, believe it or not, this is my first book by Toni Morrison. I posted this on my Instagram. By the way, you should follow me if you're not following me already. Hashtag shameless plug. Anyway, I posted this a while back, and a lot of people had suggested that I should have maybe started with Beloved or is it Blue Eyes? Yeah, there's another book. Yeah, but I found this at a charity shop, and I'd never read anything by Toni Morrison, so I just felt like, why the hell not? Let's pick this up. It's not one of those books that you can put down for very long. If you put it down, you will definitely be lost when you come back. It's a kind of book that you need to be in a reading mood. You need to be concentrating, paying attention to dates, to characters, to the plot. Like, it's not a casual read. You need to be reading it. Yeah, it's a grand book, and I hear it's very usual for Toni Morrison to write in this manner, or to write such a grand story. I don't know how else to put it, but to say like it's grand. So the story is mostly based in two places. The one place is this town community called Ruby, which is made up of, I think, 9 families who moved from another place called Haven. And they moved from Haven because of colorism. Some of the dark community members there were not getting work, so they moved from Haven to Ruby to go create a community where they can thrive and self-govern and be very particular in terms of what they believe in, how they run the community, and blah 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 blah. I understand the need for a group of people who are being discriminated against, like why they would want to move away and start their own community, but I had issues with the way Ruby is set up. It almost feels like a cult to me. It's got very, very strict rules. You pretty much can't be alternative or think otherwise, other than what the main community thinks, or the main family, the main families. I just found that quite problematic. So the second place in which the story takes place is the convent, which used to be a variety of things, but as in the present moment, as you read the story, it's actually a convent with one really troubled and depressed nun, and you kind of get to find out why she is the way she is. But for some reason, this place becomes a haven for like these women who are on a journey somewhere, who are lost, who are just trying to find a place to sleep for the night, that kind of situation. And they somehow end up living here together with the nun. And all these women are troubled in some way. They are, they come from very difficult backgrounds. They're not like, they're not like the women in Ruby, or how the people in Ruby want women to be. So as you can imagine, because these places are very close to each other, they get into conflict just because of how the women in the convent are and their background and that kind of the thing. And actually, this is where the story begins. The story begins at the pinnacle of this conflict. So Toni uses this storytelling method where the story starts where there's a huge conflict that has happened, and you wonder what would lead men to go to a convent and commit the kind of crimes they've committed. So already, like the first chapter, you are hooked, because obviously you want to see this conflict resolved, and you want to get to know the characters, and you want to know what led to this point. So the story is based in the 1970s, the present present day telling of the story, does that make sense, is based in the 1970s, but the story starts like in the like the late 1800s. So it's quite like a long period that the book covers. And I can tell it's somewhere in the South. I know the story starts in Oklahoma, the state, and like I couldn't find out if in the present day where Ruby is based, if that's in Oklahoma too. I couldn't find that information. But you know it's in the South. This is the point. I just want to read to you very quickly what Toni says about paradise. Don't worry, it doesn't give away anything, but I thought it was really an interesting summary of the book. She says, I was interested in the kind of violent conflict that could happen as a result of efforts to establish a paradise. Our view of paradise is so limited. It requires you to think of yourself as the chosen people, which means that your job is to isolate yourself from other people. That's the nature of paradise. It's really defined by who is not there as well as who is. I found this quote quite interesting because it's such a great summary of what happens in the book Paradise. And as much as the community in Ruby have found, this paradise for themselves, where they're governing themselves, they've got their own set of rules and religion and whatever. They found like a little paradise for them, but so many problems come because they're trying to maintain this so problems can be because they're trying to maintain this very exclusive community. They're trying to maintain this paradise, and yeah, the book really touches on issues that arise because of this. So the thing that I really love about this book is how it is structured. So it is divided into 9 sections, and each section is named after a female character. So for instance, the first chapter is called Ruby, and then the next one is called Mavis, and then you've got Grace, and you've got Divine. You've got all of these sections that are named after the female characters. And as you can imagine, with each section, it starts as an intro into who this female character is, what their story is, and how they somehow add to the greater story, and how they either come to be associated with the community, the Ruby community, or how they come to the convent. And I just felt like that was so refreshing. I really liked the women who ended up at the convent. They were troubled in some way or the other, as most of us are, really, if we're being honest. And they had like difficult backgrounds, just difficult stories. But what I really liked about them is like the sense of defiance. They were defying like what their husbands were telling them to do, what their lovers, what their community, just like there was a sense of defiance about them, and I really appreciated that. And as you can imagine, this creates like a lot of conflict, as I said before, because Ruby is this community that is based on very like specific Christian values, family values. This is a place of a woman. This is what she can or cannot do, So you can imagine why the women in the convent would have such a hard time with the Ruby community, and why there would be conflict there. Another thing I really enjoyed about this book is just how Toni captures the Southern accent. She just does it in such a great way. And like when I was reading it in the Southern accent. But I thought the dialogue was amazing, and she does dialogue really, really well, actually. It feels very, like some dialogue just feels like, do people really talk like this in real life? It just feels too polished. Where else with her, like I feel like her dialogue is really well captured, if that makes sense, and that southern thing really just comes out. So those are the two things that I really enjoyed about this book. But also, it's like, it's Toni. It's Toni Morrison. Come on. She knows the human condition. She's in touch with it, and she knows how to describe humans and what goes on with them, within them, and how that translates in the world, in their world. Man, she's a masterful storyteller. Let's talk about things that I struggled with. Like I said in the beginning, she has a lot of characters in this book. And as much as I enjoyed getting to know some of the characters, because they just came from such different backgrounds, and some of them were like super defiant and sassy and cheeky about it, and just led like really alternative lives, which for me is like always a plus in characters. It was a lot, to be honest. I've never, in my history of reading, I've never had to look up, like a character list thing. I've never, ever. I had to do this with this book. I had like a page that I was going to with all the characters to be reminded, okay, who's this person and who are they related to and what's their role in the community. All of that I needed to do. And I've never, ever in my history of reading had to do that. And I'm quite good with like keeping track of the story and keeping track of the characters, but you just can't do that with this book. You really have to be on it, man. Yeah, but it's an interesting challenge. So if you are wanting to be challenged in that way, then sure, go for it. The other thing is, obviously, there's the history that contextualizes the present. And again, it's like one of those storytelling thing that most books will have. I don't mind it, but I found with this book, just because Toni is really great at weaving story together, that the present and the past would just like run into each other, and I'd be like, whoa, where are we now? Are we still in the present? Are we still in the past? So I would find myself having to go back a few paragraphs and be like, oh, this is where the change happened. This is when we went to the past, but it's very like seamless. Maybe too seamless? I don't know. I just kind of had a hard time keeping track of it. So you're keeping track of the history, which is quite dense, as you can imagine, because of when the story is written. Yeah, man. But those were the two things that I really struggled with. But other than that, so let's quickly talk about the themes. I think I've already. You kind of get a sense of what themes Toni covers in the book, just because of the plot of the story, what do you call it? When the story is based, where the story is based, you kind of get the sense of what themes are covered. So in conclusion, I'd like to say this book is definitely worth to read. If anything, just bloody experience a book by Toni Morrison, if anything. Is this a great one to experience? Definitely, because it's got the epicness of why is my phone acting up? It's got the epicness of a Toni Morrison story, like in terms of themes being covered, the story itself, in terms of weaving of story with other elements, all of that. Yeah, but like I said, it's one of those stories, make sure you're reading it when you are just alert, right? when you can actually keep track of the characters, of where the story is headed, of the time, of the date, of that kind of thing. But it's also worth reading to just witness how someone is able to take like such challenging themes and make a story out of it, you know, like the imagination and the creativity it requires to put together such a book is, it's outstanding, right? Completely astonishing. So read it to witness a master at work. Yeah, and you know what the dealio is? If you are new on this channel, hit that subscribe button, right? Join our family. Yeah, and if you like the video, please like it. Make sure to show that you like it. It just means that the video gets suggested to more people like us. Yeah, thank you to the new subscribers. Thank you to the OG subscribers. I really appreciate you guys sticking around. And before I ramble and rumble, I will say goodbye. Thank you for subscribing. Take very good care. Bye. In the name of Toni Morrison, I bid you adieu.